Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Today I want to take a closer look at the Lord of the Rings role-playing from Freeleague Publishing. Now they did send these books to me, these products to me for the purposes of making some videos with them. I did show them already in like a pickup video or a new game stuff video, but I want to take a little bit more time to sort of dive into the books here and share my thoughts on them. Now even though they did supply these to me, as is always the case, they are not paying me for the video, they are not scripting it or pre-screening the video or anything along those lines. They'll get to see it at the exact same time as everybody else, and the opinions that I express are 100% completely and totally my own. Now, a while back, I also received the One Ring role-playing game from Freeleague as well, and this is the one sort of with their own rule set here. It's sort of the second edition of the One Ring role-playing game, and like I said, it's completely its own game system with the combat modes, with like attacking, defending, using archery, or things along those lines. They sent me the core rulebook, the starter set, and the lore master screen, or lore keeper screen, I forget the exact terminology here, lore master, which also includes the little supplement on Rivendell. So I'm just going to set these kind of off to the side here, but we'll look at some similarities when we get to the actual products themselves. So we're going to start with the core rulebook, and this is not going to be a comprehensive flip through, but I'm just going to give you sort of an idea of what we have here. And if you want me to do a more in-depth flip through and get it more into like the different subsystems in this game, let me know and I'll be more than happy to do that. But for now, let's just sort of take a look and see what we got. It does actually include this copy of the map here that we see. So this is the Shire on one side, and then on the other side we just have sort of the more regional, the larger region that this book sort of encompasses. But yeah, we'll take a look here, and again, we get a really good map on the inside cover as well, which is great. And like I said, this is for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, so the D20 system is in play here. A lot of the character creation stuff is very similar, but there are some differences with the way that this game plays out. We do have some new rules, so we'll touch on them just a little bit here. We do have different types of adventuring, so we have the journey sequence, which is a more expanded version of like overland travel, something that 5th edition D&D wanted to incorporate more into its system. If you remember the Tyranny of Dragons, the Hoard of the Dragon Queen adventure, which had a really lengthy overland travel sequence, that was not executed particularly well, but it is done a lot better in the Lord of the Rings role-playing. It's actually more of an integral part of the game itself. There's also a council mode, or game mode, or whatever you want to call it. And with the council, it's actually pretty cool. These are role-playing scenarios that are typically meant to be of some significant importance, right? It's not like it's every single role-playing scenario that you might come across, but it's more along the lines of like the council at Rivendell that you saw in like that's in like the Lord of the Rings novels, as well as in the movie there. So that's the kind of thing that you can have. Or when like Merry and Pippin are in Gondor with the Steward of Gondor, and Pippin basically fails his council sequence there, where instead of just saying nothing and keep saying it, he pledged his loyalty, and that got taken advantage of. So the council sequence is kind of cool because there are some ramifications for what happens during that phase. So you can either like gain allies or information, or simply be able to gain passage through a region. You could, if you do really well, you could gain like an ally to travel with you for it. If you do poorly, though, you might actually run afoul of the people that you had the council with, and you might even create new enemies, which is really, really cool. And then you have like the fellowship phase, which is essentially your downtime. Because in the Lord of the Rings, even though it doesn't really translate in the movies, there's some pretty significant time jumps from parts of the story. Like, I think it was like a 17-year gap from the time that Gandalf left the Shire with Frodo in possession of the ring before he came back. And in the movie, it made it seem like it was a lot more immediate. So Fellowship is, again, just downtime, but it works really, really well. There's also some patrons here. Your Fellowship also creates Fellowship points. And you can use these points to do things like it's like a pool, commune pool that all the characters have access to. And the only way to regain Fellowship points is during the Fellowship phase, during the downtime. But you can spend Fellowship points to do things like gain advantage, sort of things along those lines. So again, it's a really cool system that they have there. They also add a few different skills into the mix. So you have Riddle, which is how Bilbo got the ring. You've got Hunting, Travel, Explore, and Old Lore. So you can know more about like the different ages that happened or preceded the current age here. Another mechanic that I do like in this system as well is the concept of the safe haven. Because one of the things that can happen is your rests are very different in Lord of the Rings role-playing. I believe it's an optional rule, to be completely and totally fair, but it is a rule that I would go with. And that rule basically states, here we go, we got the resting rules. So the resting player heroes can benefit from long rests exclusively in sheltered and safe refuges, i.e. not on the road. The safe havens of the company certainly count as sheltered refuges, as well as any city or settlement where the company is welcomed on friendly terms. At the lore master's discretion, a deserted but well-sheltered place in the wilds could also be suitable for a long rest. So using this optional rule, for example, if you're in your exploration phase and you're going through sort of like some old ruins, the best that you can do is be able to get the benefits of a short rest, which allows you to recharge some of your abilities, as well as to spend hit dice on healing. And one of the big things with the Lord of the Rings role-playing is that it's essentially a non-magic setting. There's no spellcasting classes or options available, and using magical effects can create what's called, I think they're called shadow points, which work as sort of like a form of corruption that can actually cost your party fellowship points and can lead to negative interactions in the future. So again, it's a really cool set of mechanics, and I kind of like it. Again, it means that you have to actually go somewhere safe and get a significant amount of rest. I think a short rest is also like 8 hours now. So additionally, a short rest during the journey must be 8 hours long, during which the character sleeps and performs only light activities. Once the player hero stop traveling for at least 24 hours, or have decided to stop along the way, they can take short rests in a 1 hour chunk. So if they've, stopped traveling for a while, then they can get their short rests in a little bit quicker. But if you're in the middle of exploring and stuff like that, like a short rest is what would normally be a long rest. So again, I like that mechanic. It makes the importance of having a safe place to go a big part of the game. And again, this isn't meant to be like the same type of like epic adventures necessarily with like huge massive dungeon crawls like you would have in traditional Dungeons and Dragons. The stories are a little bit more kind of smaller scale-ish. But it places a big importance on the characters being sort of cautious with their actions, right? Instead of just charging headlong into things and being like, well, I can just sleep in the dungeon and get all of my hit points back and all of my spells back and all these other things. You have to be a little bit more cautious and resourceful, which I kind of like. So then we get into our heroic cultures. So these are essentially just the equivalent of like your ancestry in like Pathfinder or your race, or I can't remember what the new D&D term is that they're going to use for that. But they give you ability score increases that you can get, and then they each have their own individual backgrounds. So we got like the dwarves of Durin's Folk. So in general, they get a +2 to their constitution, along with a few other abilities there. But then there are different types of dwarves, which will give you a different ability score adjustment, similar to what we have with like hill and mountain dwarves in 5th edition. But again, the dwarves have their own separate background, so it's not a generic list that everybody chooses from. Each one of these has their own series of backgrounds to go along with them. So we got our elves, we got the hobbits of the Shire. Then we have the Rangers of the North. And then we have our callings, and these are our classes. Now, the big thing with Lord of the Rings role-playing is that you only have 10 levels of progression, as opposed to like a full 20-level progression, because leveling isn't the main goal of this game. The main goal is just to go through and experience the stories. But you got, again, some really cool types of classes here. You have the Captain, which is kind of similar somewhat to like a Paladin type of character. Then you've got the, the Champion, I think might be a little bit more, yes. The Champion is also kind of along those lines as well. You have the Messenger, which is kind of like a rogue or thief type character, which again, I like the way that they kind of do that. I think that's a cool concept. We do have the Scholar, so again, we don't have traditional magic in the Lord of the Rings. However, the Scholar is kind of a bard, actually. So they have like rhymes of lore, and I believe that adds like a bonus to intelligence checks to like recall information. They have the hands of a healer, so they actually have some ability to restore hit points. It's not a ton, but it is still something that can help out in a pinch, which is really cool. Then you've got the Treasure Hunter, which is also a different type of like roguish character. They also have sneak attack. We have, and their specialties as well, so they're like subclasses. So they got Burglar, which would be Bilbo. You've got like the Spy, and then we got like the, we have the Warden type character here as well. Again, just some really cool stuff. Sorry about that. Choked on nothing. But yeah, this is just a really cool system, and I like the way that they kind of handle things here. There is multi-classing as well, but you know, it is what it is. It's not too bad. There are options for going beyond 10th level as well. It's just not sort of built into the default rules. And essentially, you just get to choose one of the things from the list provided here. So you can either choose to learn a new craft, gain a new fighting style. You could choose to gain a hit die. You could choose some type of reward, an increase to sneak attack, or a virtue. And virtues are kind of like feats, essentially. So we got like rewards and virtues in here. So again, just some really cool stuff. And yeah, again, I just absolutely love the way that this game works. And the virtues are also broken down based off of your like your ancestry. There are some that anyone can choose from, which are the common ones, but then you have virtues of like the bardings, and you have like virtues of the dwarves, the elves, the hobbits, the rangers of the north. So again, just a really, just a neat way of being able to customize your characters. And then it gets into the actual phase itself. So this is kind of self-explanatory from this point on, but the adventuring phase is exactly what it sounds like. That's where the bulk of the action is going to take place. We have a fellowship phase, which again is sort of downtime, stuff that you can do. So you can do, like, one of the options that you have, for example, is to just do like spiritual recovery. So if you have earned shadow points through misdeeds, or, you know, anything that might generate them, you can spend time to reduce them based off the amount of downtime that you have. And again, the more shadow points the group has, the less fellowship points that they have, and the harder things can get. Strengthen fellowship. You can choose one undertaking to raise the fellowship rating by +1 until the next fellowship phase, so you can actually try to gain an extra boost on it. So this, again, it's just a cool system. I don't know what else to say. I think it's great. I think there's a lot of awesome stuff in here. Yeah, this is a really cool RPG that I definitely think is worth checking out, especially if you're a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. But I will say that if your familiarity with tabletop role-playing games is more along the lines of like Dungeons and Dragons, again, this is going to be a very low magic or no magic type of setting. Like, they give examples of sorcery, and some of like the more extreme examples of what's considered sorcery are things that would be the equivalent to a cantrip or a first level spell. I think maybe a second level spell in traditional Dungeons and Dragons. So if you are somebody who prefers to play or almost exclusively play spellcasters, then this might not be the system for you. But if you just kind of want that like high fantasy, low magic but high fantasy type of experience, then this is going to be an awesome book. for that. And the other thing about the adventuring phase, or the traveling phase, that I really like is that it's also based on hex crawling, which is, again, a reason why I think that they've done a better job with it in the Lord of the Rings role-playing than in just regular 5th edition D&D, because you actually have to have like different roles that the party members play when it comes to the journey, the traveling aspect. And you have somebody that's sort of navigating, you can have somebody that helps set up camps or does like the hunting. All those different sort of jobs are in place, but you base everything on hex crawling, and depending on how well you do with something like your scouting and your navigation, it can trigger events to occur. A lot of them are more role-playing oriented or focused, but you can run into a situation where you have like an encounter with some sort of adversary on the road as well. So it's just a really cool system. I think they pulled it off really well. So yeah, Lord of the Rings role-playing from Freeleague, definitely recommend it. Now, along with the core rules, we also have the Shire Adventures. And the Shire Adventures, had a little spot of packing foam on there from something else. So the Shire Adventures is the same sort of scenarios and adventures and information that was included in the Lord of the Rings, the One Ring role-playing game starter set. So this, again, is the unique rule set for the One Ring role-playing game. And this is the 5th edition D20 Dungeons & Dragons style of rules. But the adventures in here and the gazetteer information on the Shire is the same as what you would get in the starter set. So there is some similarities there. I just want to make that clear, because if your group has played through the starter set adventures and you want to get them into the 5th edition version, this book is those adventures again, just in the 5e sense. So again, it's a really cool book, and we'll take a quick look through it here. I don't want to spoil too much, but again, you've got the Shire map that we see here. We got the history of the Shire and some information on it. The Shire throughout the years. And then we get into some of our scenarios there. And again, I'm not going to go too deep into that, but these are really great introductory adventures. They're pretty low stakes, but still a lot of fun. Like, there's some sneaking around, investigations. There's going to be some combat and stuff involved. Just a really cool concept altogether. And again, starting your Lord of the Rings experience in the Shire just sort of makes sense. So I do really like that. And then finally, let's take a look at the Lore Master screen and Rivendell Compendium. So again, we had the screen and Rivendell from the One Ring RPG. So let's see what we have now when it comes to the Lord of the Rings for 5th edition. Be interesting to see how similar I believe the artwork is actually quite a bit different. I can sort of tell that already, which is cool. And this has not been opened yet, so I've had this for a little while. It's nice to finally take the plastic off and see just what we have here. So we'll start. That's just our little insert there, which has our barcode. So here is our Rivendell insert, or Rivendell Compendium. And this one's pretty thin, I'm not going to lie. But it's still interesting to have. And I want to say that I think there's information on Rivendell in the core rulebook, but I could be wrong on that. But again, you just get a little bit of information here for running it. You get Elrond as a potential patron. You get a few different characters there as well for your game, and some more information on the High Elves, which again is kind of neat. So this is only about a 12-page supplement, so it's pretty much on the thin side. I can't remember how thick this one was, so let's just take a look. Again, it's probably very similar in terms of the amount of information. Yeah, it's the same. So they're both 12 pages. It's just the 5e version of what was in here. But I do like the nice glossy cover. I do appreciate that. All right, and then we got our screen here. So it's a 3-panel screen. So we have our adventurers there, our heroes, going up against a troll, and looks like some Uruk-hai and orcs and goblins. So that's, again, some really nice artwork here, just to compare the One Ring screen. So this is more like a 5th edition D&D style of artwork, whereas the One Ring RPG kind of has more of like the Freeleague style of artwork, which, again, you can sort of pick and choose which one you prefer. But it's still really, I actually really like this art style that Freeleague uses for a lot of their systems. It's just kind of a cool look, but they're both nice looking screens. Like, you're not, you know, as far as like the visual style of it, again, this feels more like a 5th edition one. It's glossy where the other one was matte, and it has sort of more of a 5th edition artwork feel to it. But let's take a look at what we have for our inside panels. And hey, my God, we finally have a 5th edition screen for the first time in a long time that's not filled with the standard conditions. It does have the shadow conditions, but not the regular ones. So yeah, we can see sort of the different new sort of rules in here. We got magical successes, which are related to your skill checks. You might find relics, items, or you might even be gifted rewards or virtues that will allow you to gain a magical success on certain skill checks. So that just gives you a little bit of information there. The encumbrance, you've got like dread, the shadow points, and sort of that information. We do have the council sequence. So we have like how to sort of run that, which is great. We have the council rewards. Then we got some stuff for the journey. So again, the journey events, the things that you can have terrible misfortunes, run despair, ill choices, mishap, shortcut, chance meeting, or joyful sight. So a lot more bad things can happen than good things, but that sounds about right. Anyway, yeah, just a really cool system, some great products there, and yeah, I highly recommend checking this out. I mean, Freeleague is truly becoming one of my all-time favorite RPG companies. They do high-quality stuff. Their products are all really well put together. There's some fantastic artwork and style. One of the things I love about the Lord of the Rings and the One Ring RPG is that a lot of the artwork inside kind of feels like the sketches that you would have seen in Bilbo's book when he was writing it. I think that's a really cool choice. And when you get to like the new chapters, they all have like some full color, really like fantastic artwork. But yeah, this is a great system. Definitely worth checking out. Just again, keep in mind, this is a very low magic type of setting and type of game. So if you want to be throwing fireballs, and cones of cold and things like that, like this is not going to be the game for you. But if you want to have a gaming experience that's more about just the stories and less about like constantly leveling to just gain new abilities, I think this is going to be a great system for you, and one that like I said, I highly recommend it. And I'm looking forward to hopefully getting a chance to run this at some point in the near future. Anyway, let me know in the comments below if you've picked up either the One Ring RPG for the actual like standalone rule set from Freeleague, or if you picked up the Lord of the Rings for 5th edition. Let me know how that's been going for you in the comments below. Some of your experiences, some of the stories that you've gone through. I'd love to hear that from you. And once again, I want to thank Freeleague for sending this to me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I can't wait to see what else they put out for both of these games. Fantastic stuff. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I appreciate it. And I will see you all next time. Until then, take care.